he stands with Russia pretty much. I think your previous bulletin citing Charlie Kupchan was absolutely correct. At some point, if this is going to work, Trump has to realize he has to put pressure on Putin to accept a deal.
President Trump said that there are makings of a deal to end the war in Ukraine, having met with Ukraine's President Zelensky. But he also accepted that one or two very thorny issues remain outstanding. Are we actually any closer to peace? Stephen Erlanger is the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe and joins us now. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning.
Those thorny issues that Trump says remains, what are they?
Well, they're the same ones that have been now for a long time. The main one is territory. Putin still insists on getting the rest of the Donbass, a big area he has not yet fully conquered. That's the first one. And Trump has been trying to figure out ways to give it to Putin, but in ways that somehow are acceptable to Ukraine. And the second one really are security guarantees. Zelensky sounds very positive about them, Trump a little less so. We know in vague terms what they might be, but whether they're real or not, it's hard to know. And actually, there's a third issue too, which is the fate of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which the Russians occupy. The Russians want to keep it. Zelensky wants to keep it. The Americans are suggesting somehow running it and dividing up the power. But the main issues really are territory and security.
Should we talk about the territory? It does seem as though President Zelensky is prepared to offer compromises now that he hadn't been previously. For example, saying he could surrender territory in the Donbass and there'd be sort of this demilitarized zone. What is the proposal and how appealing will it be to President Putin?
Well, Zelensky's main task in Mar-a-Lago was to avoid saying no to Trump, right? They're still negotiating a U.S.-Ukraine offer to Putin, right? I mean, Putin has agency, and so far Putin hasn't moved. But what they're trying to do, this American idea, is to create this unconquered part of Donetsk, really, as some kind of demilitarized zone that could be used for free economic zone, which would mean the Ukrainians pulling back from significant defensive positions. And what Zelensky is saying is he wants to make sure the Russians pull back from their part of Donbass, which they have taken. And so far, the Russians are refusing to do that. Now, Trump had this long conversation with Putin. Putin is always very clever to call Trump before he meets Zelensky. And Trump had these very kind of sweet things to say about Putin. Putin's interested in peace, and Putin wants to help Ukraine. But the fact of the matter is maybe Trump knows something we don't know, but certainly in public, the Russians haven't moved a millimeter.
How likely is that, do you think, that Trump's holding something back that he had maybe in that conversation? They spoke for well over an hour, actually, before that meeting with Zelensky.
Well, it's possible. I think Trump wants to get everybody together. So, I mean, there's discussion of having another meeting in Washington in January of the Ukrainians and Europeans and Americans to finally come up with a proposal for the Russians. Now, Putin has been talking to Trump. So, I mean, Trump has some idea of what Putin wants. And I think if Putin can get pretty much what he wants, which will also include a minimal Ukrainian defense posture, no European troops inside Ukraine, which kind of guts the idea of security guarantees, and assurances that Ukraine won't get into NATO. If he gets all that and some deal on Donbass, then maybe he'd be willing to have this conversation. But right now, we just don't know.
Yeah, and Zelensky has also already said, OK, we won't push for Ukraine joining NATO as an absolute in terms of these peace negotiations.
Yes, that's right, because basically it's very clear NATO, which runs by consensus, won't accept them now anyway, and Trump says he won't accept them. So, I mean, that's enough for now.
There's some significant logistics, aren't there, here? On the territory piece, before Zelensky can actually formally agree to anything, he's got to put that legally to a referendum in Ukraine. And in order to do that, he wants there to be a ceasefire. But Putin's saying, and is supported by Donald Trump in this, to say, no, there will not be a ceasefire because, of course, that could have an impact on either side's position in the war.
Yes, that's right. I mean, Zelensky and the Europeans still want a ceasefire first and then a deal. Putin still insists on a deal before a ceasefire. Now, Zelensky's been arguing to even surrender land for a while. I mean, not in perpetuity. He would need a parliamentary vote or a referendum. And to have a referendum would require an election, and that would require some peace, like 60 days of ceasefire. So far, the Russians have said no. And I think Trump's kind of siding with Putin here. He wants a deal. I think the idea of getting a ceasefire first is less interesting to Trump and certainly to Putin.
And I wonder how much we can trust Donald Trump's statements, because he does waver, doesn't he, in his support. You know, previously he said Ukraine could get all of its lost land back. It's pretty unclear now, based on the comments he's made in the last 24 hours, where he actually stands on that issue.
Yeah, well, I think he stands with Russia pretty much. I think your previous bulletin citing Charlie Kupchan was absolutely correct. At some point, if this is going to work, Trump has to realize he has to put pressure on Putin to accept a deal. And the best outcome of a deal for Ukraine is a sovereign, independent Ukraine with security assurances on what's left of its territory, which is about 80% or so, and assurances, guarantees that Russia won't try to invade again. Now, if we can get there, then I think that some compromise on the territory is possible. But if you believe that Trump is going to come militarily to the aid of Ukraine, even within the context of a security guarantee, you have a great faith in Donald Trump that I don't share.
Yes. You said, Stephen, that it was sort of very clever that Putin always gets in ahead of the conversations and had that conversation with Trump beforehand. I'm reminded of the phone call that Putin and Trump had back in October, when there were lots of rumours circulating, I think fairly well substantiated rumours, that the US was considering giving Ukraine Tomahawk missiles. Putin seems to get wind of that, gets on the phone to Donald Trump, and then that promise evaporates.
Yes, that's absolutely right. There have been many moments where it looked as if Trump was ready to put pressure on Putin and did, in fact, put some sanctions on two big Russian energy companies. Those still exist. But then he pulls back. I mean, in general, he's more angry with Zelensky normally than with Putin. I think he really does believe Ukraine's in the way of a big, beautiful relationship with Vladimir Putin. Trump would like to end the war, no question. And I think Putin still sees Trump as his best agent. That's a hard word, but his best mediator to get a deal Russia can accept.
The wider context of this, Stephen, just to finish, we've got Donald Trump, Zelensky speaking pretty positively, sort of saying we are 90% of the way there towards a deal. Does this seem to you to be the start of the beginning of the end?
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's been horrible, Ukraine, and it's been horrible last week. I mean, it's been horrible for years now. A lot of people dying. Is it the beginning of the end? Yeah. But I mean, first, you say Zelensky and Trump are more positive about getting to a deal. They're not. The deal is a proposal to be made to Vladimir Putin. Now, what Vladimir Putin says about the deal, my guess is he'll say, gee, that's really interesting, but we have other demands, and let's talk about it, and we'll kick the can down the road without a ceasefire while the war continues, because Putin thinks he's going to win the war, and in the end, he thinks the West will get tired.
Stephen, thank you very much. Stephen Erlanger, the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe, often on hand after these sort of big crunch meetings to dissect exactly what's been going on.